they had the arraignment for the two cops, and it was interesting. I was talking to Ron Thomas on the phone, and Ron says, "Do you mind if I have my attorney call you, Mr. Wagner, since you interviewed a person who can testify as to the character of one of the cops in Orange County that participated in killing a homeless, defenseless man who had made no threatening gestures at all. None at all." And you see this Officer Manuel, what's his name? Slips from my mind, but I'm sure Dan Petrie will know when we get him on here. We have a guest coming shortly, and you want to hear what Dan's got to tell you. Anyway, Manuel says, "Look at this." He puts on the rubber gloves and shows them to Mr. Thomas, Kelly Thomas. He says, "See this? These two Fs are going to F you up." And then he proceeds to get his baton out, like, "You better run, I'm going to hit you." So this homeless man runs. And then they chase him and they knock him to the ground and they start pounding and beating him up. And then they lay on him. Then other cops come and they just all pound him and then they taser him. And he's yelling, "Dad, Dad, help me, Dad." And this is a 30-some-year-old man. But he's schizophrenic. He could live with his dad or he could live with his mom, who are unfortunately divorced. Or maybe fortunately, depending. But he had two homes to go to. But because of his schizophrenia, he preferred to just wander the streets. And here's the cops who are just beating the crap out of him because they think he might be somebody. They say, they got a phone call, the cops say that somebody was going through somebody's car. No, he was sitting at the bus station, and they have him on video. And they also have the beating on video. It's pretty horrific to see cops just take a person and just beat him to death. And actually, it wasn't the beating that killed him, although they messed his face up really bad. It wasn't the beating, but they compressed his lungs by all laying on top of him after tasering him. And it was totally unnecessary. It was totally unnecessary. But that pales by comparison, because we live in Santa Maria, the all-American town where uniformed cops shoot to death another Santa Maria uniformed cop. But we're not supposed to ask questions and ask why. You want to say, "Oh, that guy that died, he was dating an underage girl or something, and he had a wife and kids of his own or something." Really? Is that the whole story? Then why didn't you just taser him? Why didn't they just shoot him in the legs? Why did they have to kill a uniformed cop? Or did that uniformed cop know something that he would have talked about if they had arrested him? It's awful quiet out there. I'm just throwing out questions. So, Chief of Police Dan, so Mayor Larry, when are we going to see the report? When are we going to see the forensic photographs of their dead uniformed cop on the ground? When are you going to make all that public? Because Mayor Larry says, we don't need a police review committee of citizens. Oh, no. We just shoot cops, we shoot anybody we want to, and then we hide the reports. And I'm still suspicious how Dolly Thomas committed suicide, really, while she was about to get half of ex-Sheriff Thomas's pension, keep the house and everything else because he was off with his new girlfriend. And did she really commit suicide? She loved her grandchildren, and she was a strong woman. She had worked in the county system somehow. Anyway, this guy comes to me. His name is Jaime. I'm just going to use his first name. And Jaime says, "Look, back in 2009, the cops came up to me at the Strawberry Festival, came up to my wife. They beat us both up. My wife was so traumatized. She's got post-traumatic stress syndrome, and she's on meds." Okay, cops made a mistake. But now the cops try to stay up, and these are Santa Maria cops again. I'm not going to give their names because I haven't interviewed the cops, and they have their side of the story too. So now they don't prosecute them. It's 3 years, and they have not brought this case to a trial with a jury. So this morning, he calls me and says, or I called him, I can't remember, but he wanted to do this show, and he's not here. And I'm wondering why he didn't show up to tell the whole ugly story. Remember when I said right after I talked to Ron Thomas and said I'd talk to his attorney? I got a phone call from a police investigator, like within 5 minutes of hanging up the phone. And you could hear somebody tap the phone, you could hear the clicks. And this investigator says, well, I understand you know something about our cops down here. And I said, yeah, I do. As soon as I got done talking with the father of the victim, the investigator for Orange County DA's office calls me, gives me his name, his number. And so in a roundabout way, he finally gets around to saying, oh yeah, I actually work for the district attorney's office, yeah. Well, that wasn't the attorney that Ron Thomas had indicated he would have call me. He then calls me about an hour later or so. Our phone lines are tapped, people. Nothing is sacred anymore. Your cell phone, your home phone, text messages, they steal and get into anything and everything just to obstruct justice. And my bottom line is this: we the people, you, need to find 24 other people like you in this county that will form a common law, lawful special grand jury to start indicting cops, mayors like Mayor Larry, who's fined with putting sodium hydrofluorosilicic acid, which isn't that what they put in rat poison? He's putting it in our drinking water. They've been doing it. And I think they cheated on the vote, and I've talked about that way back in 05, 04. These are crimes. And how is it that Mayor Larry's son gets elected county supervisor when Joe Santano has been in there long enough to get his pension? Then we get son of Larry. So you got a father as mayor of the town, and you got son as county supervisors. You mean out of 700,000 people in this county, we can't find anybody else who are in different families to hold these positions? That's too much power centered in one family. Then we got 2 judges who are married to each other. Out of 12, 13 judges, 2 in the same family, or supposedly some kind of marriage. I don't think they have any kids, but they call it a marriage, whatever. Too much power concentrated in too few hands. So anyway, Jaime's telling me this blood-awful story. It says Monday they took his kids away. Why? Oh, because whatever. I said, well, Jaime, come to the show tonight. We'll discuss it all and get it on the record. So I go with Jaime. He needs a ride down there because he can't go with his wife because they got a restraining order. So husband and wife can't even talk to each other. Now he's showing me papers that says contract not to commit suicide that is supposedly his wife signed. I don't know because I didn't talk to his wife about that issue. But he's showing me these papers, and he's going down there, and I'm trying to give him a heads up. I says, you don't want a public defender. They'll waive your right to a jury. You don't want this. You want to get a jury trial, Jaime, and you want to get it as soon as possible. Do not do like my other victim, William Christopher, who spent 6 years without a trial of a judge or trial by jury. 6 years they kept him locked up on charges with no trial because his wife had lied. Well, that's what Jaime's saying. His wife lied, got him arrested, then she got suicidal. She was sorry she lied. She's got emotional. They need help. And Jaime and his wife are not getting help. They're getting processed so they can steal their 1-year-old baby and their 14-year-old daughter and one child in between and farm them off to be abused in foster care. They need help. They're not getting help. All these organizations are hurting the children. His 14-year-old daughter just doesn't understand what's happened. I'm sure she doesn't. And she probably never will. And then they'll tell her a bunch of lies and turn her against her mother and her father. And if you're like that one up in Oregon, Will Gaskins, they'll try to turn her into a lesbian. The system really sucks. Anyway, I apologize Jaime's not here. The show was for Jaime tonight. So we're going to go to this tape. 1 minute. Watch Jaime as he walks in to the family court judge down by the sheriff's lockup, and I haven't seen or heard from him since, and I expected to. I'll be back with Dan Petrie. Well, folks, that was Jaime as he walked into the special, unconstitutional, not common law family court, where I hope he had, courage enough and knowledge enough to know what to say, what to do. But we haven't heard from him. My guess is they found an excuse to arrest him, take him into custody. Then the wife doesn't have the help she needs. Oh, yeah, I took my hat, put it back on. Force of habit. I wear a white hat, and I keep going through a lot of them because you go into these corrupt government places like City Hall, county supervisor's hearing, and there's so much crap flying in the air, and it comes down on my hat, and it's black when I walk out. And you start out white, but they don't get black here because we just tell you the straight truth, whether you like it or not. With me now is Dan Petrie, who himself went through something what Jaime is just starting on 20-some years ago, right, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the show, Dan.
All right, nice to be back, Mr. Wagner.
So what do you think Jaime's going to go through?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. They're, for some reason, they're trying to do like they did to my family, which instead of the police helping the family get back together and be a family unit, they're trying to do what you said, which is foster the kids out and
destroy the marriage.
And that's exactly what the police did in my case. And if you remember the show I was on, instead of arresting the criminals in my case, and I obviously proved that my ex-wife were victims of a crime, a police crime in particular, they arrested me, the victim, and then put my family through, as you say, hell, and let the real criminals just run around like pirates and basically, rape and pillage and do what they wanted, while I was the only one who knew what was going on, was constantly threatened to not go public on what I knew by the police and the people who were victimizing us.
Oh, that's interesting you mentioned that, because this Dennis, in this book, Attorneys Above the Law, he says, after he'd gotten royally screwed by his attorney, he told us, I'm going to write a book, which you did. And he did. And his attorney said, I'll offer you $700 to sign a confidentiality agreement and not publish this book. Well, if he's doing such a great job as an attorney, why would he offer his client $700 to keep his mouth shut?
Well, and $700 is ridiculous because you've probably ruined your client's life.
Yeah,
So
he took more than $100,000
exactly.
from Dennis,
So
and